Welcome back to History Class with Dr. W and our continuing discussion of American cultural history. We've been talking about the evolution of American culture in the early years of its development, from the colonial period through the Revolutionary War. In this lecture, we turn to the development of American culture in the early 19th century, particularly in the growing American cities and amongst the new and growing middle class. The decades following the creation of the new nation witnessed a surge in industrialization, urbanization, immigration, and invention that only increased after the Civil War. The nation's economy remained rooted in the growing cities of the eastern seaboard, particularly port cities like New York, Boston, and Charleston. The rapid growth and spread of the population, though, contributed to the rise and growth of other cities like Chicago, Pittsburgh, Atlanta, and New Orleans, and to the importance of rivers like the Ohio and the Mississippi. A growing portion of the economy flowed through the middle of the country, not just in and out of the ports on the East Coast. A revolution in transportation hastened these developments, including the completion of the Erie Canal in 1831, and greater reliance on steamboats on the Mississippi and elsewhere. The telegraph was introduced in 1837, and the railroad was not far behind. Americans found themselves living in increasingly bustling and growing cities, offering new and exciting options in entertainment and leisure activities. They also found new possibilities in movement, both locally within cities and across the countryside. More Americans became enlisted in the rhythms of a new sort of lifestyle, that of the worker or the employee. By the millions, Americans now headed off to work in a mill or a factory, working long, hard hours, and perhaps having a few hours in the evening or on the weekend for themselves. The natural rhythm of life on the farm transitioned to life governed by the factory whistle. This brought with it many problems and concerns, but also contributed to a new concept: leisure time. When not at work, Americans sought out ways to enjoy themselves. For some, the clatter of railroads and the shrill whine of the factory whistle signaled a departure from a simpler, quieter, and better time. Romanticism became a movement among some artists and writers. Romanticists celebrated emotions, feelings, and nature. They expressed concern about the cities and new technologies. For some, such as the writer Edgar Allan Poe, these concerns found expression in novels and poems involving fear, terror, the unknown, and the macabre. Herman Melville, best known for his swirling ocean epic Moby Dick, also wrote short stories such as Bartleby the Scrivener, a pointed condemnation of the rising middle class of secretaries and office workers, such as they were in the antebellum period. And transcendentalists, such as Henry David Thoreau and Ralph Waldo Emerson, wrote poems and essays critiquing the rising cities and celebrating a return to nature. The Hudson River School of artists rose to prominence in the 1830s, best known for their large landscape paintings. These artists typically chose as their subject matter majestic natural marvels like Niagara Falls or the Sierra Nevada mountains. Humans, when present at all, are rendered insignificant in their paintings. Nonetheless, the United States forged ahead into the industrial age, and more Americans found themselves part of the growing middle class, those working in various professions from medicine to the law, businessmen and managers, entrepreneurs and sportsmen. Such people, working hard to distinguish themselves from the laboring class, both created new activities to further their own distinction and sought guidance in how best to dress, to act, and to behave. Guidebooks and pamphlets proliferated, providing instructions for both men and women of the rising middle class. Godey's Lady's Book, founded in 1830, was particularly geared to housewives of the era. It offered stories, articles, and poems along with advice on dress, education, and raising children, etiquette and manners. The cult of domesticity, popularized in the 1830s in a host of books, magazines, pamphlets, and newspapers, solidified in the popular imagination ideal roles for women and men. Women were homemakers, cooks, cleaners, and organizers. The home was their sphere, and their primary role was child rearing and child raising. Men were the breadwinners. They should be ambitious and tireless, striving always for the next rung of the workplace ladder. In the home, their status was not to be questioned. Women were submissive and subservient, even as they supervised children, did the shopping, and ran the home. At the same time, some outspoken women challenged such stereotypes, not only by marching for women's rights, which was actually pretty rare in that era, but rather by joining other social movements, such as the anti-slavery movement or the temperance movement that sought to ban alcohol. The Grimke sisters of South Carolina, Sarah and Angelina, traveled the country as champions of abolition. And Lucretia Mott and Elizabeth Cady Stanton organized the Seneca Falls Convention in 1848, where women issued their own version of the Declaration of Independence, emphasizing that women too were created equal. In the next lecture, we'll talk about culture within the working class and the laboring class, typically in the big cities of the eastern United States, wrapping up our introduction to American culture in the years prior